So much of this service is travelling around the world, making sure the standards are kept up and making sure the devotees are able to manage with the Deity Worship. He's a wealth of knowledge of all things deity worshipping at home, temple, if there's anything else other than that. And he likes to always refer to Srila Prabhupada's, what did Prabhupada say about this? If there's a question, then okay, go to Prabhupada. Prabhupada's a reference point. If you can't find it in Prabhupada, then let's not do it. So anyway, I don't have to say much about him. He said I'm not allowed to give an introduction, so I just kind of broke that rule there. So we'd like to invite His Grace Nrisimha Kavacha to be here, and some time for questions and answers. So he's going to speak about deity worship, general deity worship of the community here in Scotland, and Sri Sri Kodnitai Mai Pishashi as the focus of our community here in Scotland. In fact, the whole North region.
I got water there. Thanks. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chanda Ballabha Giribara Chari Gopi Chanda Ballabha Gopi Chanda Ballabha Giribara Chari Gopi Chanda Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chanda Ballabha Giribara Chari Gopi Chanda Ballabha Giribara Chari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Banacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Chari Gopi Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivara Chari Gopi Jana Ballabha Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivrajakacharya Asto Tarasata Shishi Madhi Prangresha Parikara Bhakran Samshura Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Bibiti Poundacharya Seva Whole World Shura Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivrajakacharya Asto Tarasata Shishi Madhi Prangresha Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Braj Vamesha Vrindavanama Ki Navadip Mayapur Dama Ki Purushtam Chitra Jaganapuri Dama Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Maharani Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi Hari Hari all glorious and glories all glorious and glories all glorious and glories all glorious and glories Shri Govan Shri Guranga all glorious to Prabhupada Ki Om Vishnu Rai Krishna. So it's really nice to be here again. It's been a few years. And as Prabhu mentioned, I live in Australia. And as you're probably aware, for the last few years, Australia's reverted back to being a penal colony. Our borders were closed, and no one in, no one out. So it was an interesting experience, but it was really quiet. It was just really, really quiet. So it was a peaceful experience, and I think my wife and I got to know each other a lot better during that period of time. And it was quite interesting because one of the things I heard was that the domestic violence and abuse really, really skyrocketed during that period of time because a lot of people were living with someone they didn't really know. But for us, it had a really positive experience. We just got to know each other a lot better. And so it was a very good experience. But now the Australian borders are open, I can travel again, which is what I spend most of my time doing. And my wife, she's quite sort of appreciative of my service, and she's very encouraging. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. And it's really nice to see so many devotees here. To me, it's just proof that the process of Krishna consciousness actually does work, and that Krishna consciousness is all attractive. Otherwise, why are you all here? Krishna is all attractive, and you're here because of that. So it's wonderful to see. So I wanted to read a verse from the 19th chapter of the Madhya Lila, which is interesting enough. It was the chapter that was being read this morning in the class, but that wasn't what inspired me, because there's a particular verse here. Where is it? Sorry, hang on a second. I'll just find it. It's a very nice verse. It's actually Lord Chaitanya is talking about the process of devotional service. Okay. There we go. Oh, actually, sorry, it's 22, not 19 at all. 22, chapter 22, text 128. So what's happened here is Lord Chaitanya has just described to Sanatana Goswami the 64 process or 64 elements of devotional service. And then he summarizes these 64 elements. And he says, Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, Bhagavat Shravan, Mathuravasa Srimotare Shariye Sevan, that one should associate with devotees, chant the holy name of the Lord, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside at Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. Then he goes on to say, Sakala Sadhana Shesta E Pancha Anga, Krishna Prema Janmaya E Panchera Alpa Sangha. These 5 limbs of devotional service are the best of all. Even a slight performance of these 5 awakens love for Krishna. And then he goes on. He says that Sraddha Visheshada Priti Srimurte Angasevane, with love and full faith, one should worship the lotus feet of the deity. One should meditate, should taste the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees, and one should associate with the devotees who are more advanced than oneself and who are endowed with a similar type of affection for the Lord. One should congregationally chant the holy name of the Lord and reside in Vrindavan. Then there's a verse I'm trying to get to. This is the one. The power of these 5 principles is very wonderful and difficult to understand. Even without faith in them, a person who is offenseless can awaken his dormant love of Krishna simply by being a little connected to them. So this is the extraordinary nature of the process of bhakti, that even if we don't understand how the process of bhakti works, it has its effect. Even though we come here to the temple, we take Krishna Prasad, we participate in the kirtan, we associate with the devotees, even if we don't understand the nature of bhakti, even if we don't understand the power of these principles, it has its effect. It purifies our heart. And in essence, what it is doing is a really nice verse in the Shastastikam, the first verse actually, where Lord Chaitanya is explaining. He says, Cheto Dapana Majam, Bhav Maha Devagni Navapanam, Shreyai Kaira Bachandrika Vitanam Vidyavad Barujivanam, Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, Pratipatam Punam Ritaswaram, Savat Mastaparang Parang Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan. And he begins the verse by saying, Cheto Dapana Marjana. So, Marjana means to cleanse, yeah? And Dapa means a mirror, yeah? And Cheta means the heart. So he's comparing the heart to be like a mirror. And Marjana, he talks about how we need to cleanse the mirror of the heart. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience of maybe you've got an attic in your house, and sometimes you might go through the attic and clean up the attic, and you find old stuff that's been sitting there for like 100 years or something, and you come across a mirror and it's all covered in dust, and you look in the mirror, you can't see anything. And you start to cleanse the mirror, and the more you cleanse the mirror, the more you're able to see yourself, your reflection in the mirror. So the process of bhakti is like that. It reminds me a little bit of a story I heard many years ago. Janani Osprey told me there was a family in Mumbai, and they had this deity that had been in the family for many, many years. And the deity had become quite covered in black something. I'm not sure what it was, but black something. So one day they decided to have a maha clean of this deity. And they were cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. And eventually they discovered that the deity was made out of precious jewels. They didn't know that. It had been in their family for generations, and they didn't know that it was made of jewels. So this is the nature in this material world. And it's just like, you know what it's like if you leave, you can clean your kitchen or whatever, especially these new kitchens, where they're all stone, glass, metal, things like that. You clean them one day, you come back the next day, and everything's covered in dust. That's just the nature of this material world. It is everything by nature deteriorates. Everything by nature becomes covered by the material nature. And that's also our nature, is we become covered over by the material nature if we're not active in the process of bhakti. And this is why devotional service is so important, because by engaging in devotional service, this marjana, we're cleansing the dust from the heart, and Prabhupada mentions how this process of devotional service, he says, it cleanses the dust of past karma that's accumulated on the mind. So due to our activities in this material world, we become covered by the material nature. And the devotional service, it acts very, very effectively and very powerfully to cleanse that dust. And this is the point that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was making here, that these 5 principles are very wonderful and difficult to understand. It's very difficult to understand how bhakti works. It's very difficult to understand how it's cleansing our heart. But Mahaprabhu is saying it's very wonderful the way it works. And excuse me, and it cleanses this dust of past karma from the mind. And he says here, even if you have no faith, it's like sometimes we see, people may come to the temple, or just like yesterday, Dr. Prabhu led us on this wonderful Harinam in Glasgow, and just we were getting such nice reactions from the people in the city, and they don't understand what we're doing. They just think we're out. Like even some people, I think they thought we're out there begging because they remember someone came up and gave you some coins, yeah, and they probably thought we were begging or something like that. But they're not offensive in their mentality. They just see the devotees on the street and they think, oh, this is nice, and they hear it. They don't know what's going on, but just by the fact that they're hearing the chanting of the holy name, their heart is becoming purified, and their bhakti is gradually being awoken. So this is why all these, particularly these 5 elements, as I mentioned, Lord Chaitanya mentions 64 items of devotional service, but he does mention that these 5 in particular are quite extraordinary. So he starts off with sadhu sangha. So sadhu sangha means the association of devotees, particularly saintly devotees. And one of the reasons, there's many reasons, but one of the reasons this is so powerful is because one thing is when you associate with sadhus, their hearts are pure, and they have no ulterior motive, or no material motive at least. So obviously they have an ulterior motive because they want to give you Krishna consciousness, but they have no material motive. They're not trying to, get something from you. They're not trying to profit from you materially. Their interest is to give you Krishna. And I was having this conversation this morning with, I think it was with Murli Manohar. We were talking about the nature of devotees and how a devotee is actually a real friend, because a devotee wants to give you Krishna. He wants to give you the thing which is best for you. In Sanskrit, there's different words used for friend. One word is bandhu, one word is mitra, and one word is suhrit. And they have different meanings, they're different relationships. Like bandhu is like a friend, like, Adhoksha myself or Prabhupada Prana myself, we have this like friendly relationship. Whereas like, and we're kind of equals in terms of age and whatever. And then you look at say someone like mitra. This means like an uncle or someone who's older than you who has a protective nature to you. And then you look toward, and the last word is suhrit. So hrit means the heart, and su means the best, or it's a prefix that amplifies the word that follows. So suhrit means someone who's your best well-wishing friend. And there's this, we know there's this verse in the 5th chapter of the Gita where Krishna says, Bhaktarang Yagatabasam, Savalok Maheshwaram, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati, where he talks about his nature. And he says, the person who understands that I'm the supreme enjoyer is Bhaktarang, Yagatapasam, I'm the beneficiary of all sacrifice and austerities, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, and I'm the proprietor of all planets and demigods. Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, so Suhrit, that I'm the supreme well-wishing friend of all living entities. Gyatva Mam, knowing thus, knowing me like this, Shantim Richati, that person attains peace in this world. So Prabhupada, he mentions in various places, he said, even the spiritual master, he's not really your friend, but he's your friend in so much as he can give you Krishna. So Krishna is the only real friend because he's the only person who really understands what's the best thing for us. And as long as someone who's trying to connect us with Krishna, then that person is our friend. But otherwise, we see in these relationships, generally they're quite material, and we see that people are trying to exploit us for one reason or another. Whatever it may be, but you will see, it's usually some kind of mutual or one-sided kind of exploitation. So this is one reason why Sadhu Sangha is very important. And of course, there are many other ways. They give us such a wonderful example of how to lead our lives in Krishna consciousness. Like you think of anyone you know who's a sadhu. We can take Srila Prabhupada, for instance. He leads his life in such an exemplary way. He inspires others to become Krishna conscious. So it says Sadhu Sangha Nama Kirtan. Of course, I'm probably preaching to the converted here, I guess, because I think you're all quite familiar with the benefits of chanting the holy name. You're sitting here in this wonderful kirtan that Mangal Vaishnav, right? Yeah, was leading before. I met him like about almost 30 years ago in Russia. So, not Russia, sorry, Ukraine. And he still remembers the story I told then, which is kind of funny. But so the holy name, it cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. The whole Bhagavatam, actually, when you study the Bhagavatam, you'll see the whole Bhagavatam is focusing on the glories of the holy name, focusing on the glories of hearing and talking or singing about Krishna. And even in the concluding verses, it's emphasizing this point again, how important it is to hear and chant Krishna's holy name. And so it's now Bhagavat Shravan, to study, to hear the Bhagavatam. This is there's a nice verse in I think it's in the second canto of the Bhagavatam. It says, Krishna Swadama Bhagade Dhamagani Visa Kalo Nashta Drishamesha Puranako Dinadanaha. That this Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun. And it's arisen just like when we were the other day when we went to Harinam, we got into the car and the doctor was telling us some Scottish jokes. And he said that the sun came out in Glasgow yesterday and everyone thought it was a UFO. So it's kind of like that, I guess. So where I live, it's like, if you don't see the sun for a week, it's kind of really strange. Yeah. And they have one place in Australia called Mildura, and they call it the weather resort. The sun shines for 364 days a year. And like maybe once a year you get rain. So it's kind of the complete opposite. But every place is different. Every place is, has its pluses and minuses. But anyhow, so the sun, it's like it's as brilliant as the sun. The Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun. And it says that persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance will get light from this Purana. So this is the situation in this material world. The material world is so covered by this illusory nature that people in this world, they're thinking they're the controller, they're thinking they're the enjoyer, they're thinking so many things. They're thinking that, I think I'm Australian. Probably many of you think you're Scottish or from Ukraine or from India or whatever. But this is all false designations. We're none of these things. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jivera Surapahoy, Krishnera Nityadas. Krishnera Tatasta Shakti, Beda Bed Prakash. The living entity, the soul, is an eternal servant of Krishna. This Nitya. This Nitya means your eternal, unchanging nature. It doesn't change. It's who you are. You maybe forget about it. You lose sight of who you are. But this is the nature of the living entity. Why? This is Krishnera Tatasta Shakti, Beda Bed Prakash, because the living entity is Krishna's marginal potency, a manifestation simultaneously different but not different from Krishna. So this is why we have this nature is because of our connection with Krishna, and the point of studying the Bhagavatam is to reawaken this nature. Just that Nama Kirtan Bhagavatam Mathura Vasa. This is a really interesting one. Mathura, it means, you know what Vasi means? Yeah? Vasi means a resident, like Braj Vasi, or Mayapur Vasi, or Karuna Bhavan Vasi, whatever. Yeah? So it means becoming a resident of, and it says Mathura, of Mathura Dham. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to all pack your bags and go live in Mathura or Mayapur or anything like that. Because the point is that Advaita Acharya, he said to Lord Chaitanya, he says, my dear Lord, wherever you are, that is Vrindavan. So here we have Kodaitai, Mayapur Shashi. So wherever Mayapur Shashi is, that is Vrindavan. And in the same way, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to come and live here. if you turn your home into a temple, a place of worship, a place where God's names are chanted, a place where you discuss the pastimes of the Lord, a place where you're worshiping the Lord, then your home becomes the Dham. So in this way, we can fulfill all these different requirements or these different angas of bhakti, these primary angas of bhakti, anywhere in the world. You don't need to live in the Dham. Of course, the Dham is a nice place to go and spend time focusing on hearing and chanting, but still, we can do the same thing anywhere in the world. And this is the wonderful feature of the process of bhakti, especially that which is given by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, that he showed us how Krishna consciousness can be practiced anywhere in the world. And we see that devotees are practicing Krishna consciousness everywhere in the world. Sometimes we see that, every country in the world, there's temples, even in the most difficult situations in the world. Sometimes we find there are, I know a devotee who was actually in the American military, and he was in the war in Iraq. And he was practicing Krishna consciousness there in Iraq. There are devotees who are in prisons, or people in prisons who become devotees in the prison, and they practice Krishna consciousness there in the prison, and through their practice they inspire others to also take up the process of Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada has shown us how we can practice Krishna consciousness in any situation, in any environment, in any circumstance. There's no limit to the practice of Krishna consciousness, and there's no limit to how far you can progress on the practice of Krishna consciousness wherever you are. And then I guess it brings us to the topic I was asked to speak about. And this is Srimutira Sharaya Sevan, to worship the deity with faith and veneration. So this is a very, very important element of devotional service. And it's kind of important also that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Sharaya Sevan, to worship the deity with faith and veneration, or to sevana, to serve the deity with great respect. And the idea, especially with faith, it means that we understand. There's a nice story which is told elsewhere in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Nityananda Prabhu relates this story of Sakshi Gopal. Actually, there's a temple a little bit west of Puri. Does anyone here know where Puri is in India? State of Orissa? I'm sure many of you have been there. Yeah, quite an extraordinary place. Anyhow, so basically due west of Puri, there's a small temple there called Sakshi Gopal. He wasn't always there. Originally, the deity was located in Vrindavan. Then he moved down towards a place called Vallabh and then he moved across the other side. He was brought by Prataparudra Maharaj to Puri. Anyhow, so the story, essentially the story goes, it's a very beautiful story. There was a Brahmana, he was traveling around, a young Brahmana was traveling around with an older Brahmana. He served the old Brahmana very nicely. He took care of his needs, everything like that, which is you find this is quite common in India, how young men will take care of older men. Even you find when I know a temple I lived in Australia, there's many young men there from India, and there was a few elder gentlemen there, and they'd always look after them really nicely. They'd serve them and make sure they had a seat when they came to the temple and just take care of their needs. So it's quite common in Vedic culture to have this kind of experience. Anyhow, and he was serving this Brahmana very nicely, and the old Brahmana, he was a cultured person, and he wanted to reciprocate with the young man. And he said, I want to do something. I want to do something for you. I want to give you something. So he said, I'll give you my daughter in marriage. And the young Brahmana, because he was penniless, he didn't have anything, but the older Brahmana is well-to-do. So he thought, well, no, I can't have him saying this. Let's go say it in front of the deity. At least then we know it's for real. So he said it in front of the deity. He went to the older Brahmana, sometime later, when they'd gone home, he went to visit the old Brahmana and said, look, you made this promise to me now. You please fulfill the promise. And the older Brahmana, he wanted to do it, but his family was not in favor. His wife actually said, if you give my daughter to this man, I'll commit suicide. So she was quite determined that this shouldn't happen. But he was feeling, I have to do it. What can I do? My wife's going to commit suicide. My son's going to leave. What can I do? And he said, so I can't do it. I can't give you my daughter. And so the young Brahmana, he knew that the older Brahmana was a person of integrity. He knew that he wanted to do this, but he was, as we say in Australia, he was over a barrel. He couldn't do much about it. And so he went back to Vrindavan and he went to see Gopal. And he was explaining to Gopal about the situation because he had this faith that Krishna was not a statue. Krishna was directly present before him as a deity. And he started to talk to Gopal. And he said, look, this is what's happened. And I want you to prove that this elder Brahmana, that his word is true, that it's not a lie. And so the deity responded. And the deity was saying, but, I'm a deity. I can't walk. And then the young Brahmin, he said to Gopal, he said, my dear Lord, if you can talk, you can walk. So let's go. And actually, just before he said that, he said, Pratima nahi tumi saksha brajendanandana. He says, my dear Lord, you're not a statue. You're directly the son of Nanda Maharaj Krishna. So if we have that faith that the deity is Krishna, then we can have these types of interactions. There's so many amazing stories. There's also a story of Raghunandan Thakur. So a very, very beautiful story. He was a young boy. His father was Mukunda. They lived in a place called Kandivas, which is a well-known place in Bengal. So anyway, one day Mukunda was a physician, and sometimes he would have to go out of the village to meet his patients and stuff like that. So one day Mukunda had to go out, and he couldn't do the deity worship as he did normally. So he instructed his son Raghunandan Thakur to do it. And so he explained the process. You put the plate in front of the deity, you chant the mantras, and the deity will eat. So he accepted. He just, okay, Father, I'll do that. So then his father leaves and goes on, and then Mukunda leaves, and then Raghunandan Thakur, he went to do the offering, and so he was ringing the bell. He said the prayers. Krishna didn't come to eat. What's going on here? And saying, my Lord, please come eat. Krishna didn't come to eat. He says, my Lord, my father said you'll come and eat, so please come and eat. And he started to get really concerned that he might have done an offense or something, so he started to cry. And then when the deity saw that he was so convinced, but also that he was so disturbed that he wasn't coming, the deity got off the altar, sat down, and ate everything on the plate. And then he finished off the offering, he did the arati, he washed the plates and everything. And then all the residents, as is normal, it's the same any temple you go to in ISKCON, after the offering, what devotees look for? Mahaprasadam. So all the devotees are looking for Mahaprasadam, and they said, Raghunandan, where's the Mahaprasadam? And he says, what do you mean Mahaprasadam? He said, but you made the offering, so where's the Mahaprasadam? He said, Krishna ate everything. And they're thinking that he said, this boy is chalak, he's hiding everything for himself, But then, so when Mukunda came back, they explained to Mukunda what had happened. And Mukunda's singing, no, Raghunandan, he's very honest. He would never tell a lie. So he asked him, well, what happened? He said, the deity, he ate everything. So he accepted that. He said, but one day he wanted to test. So sometime later, he arranged that he told Mukunda, Raghunandan, that I have to go to another village, so please you do the offering. He said, yes, Father. So what happened is Mukunda, he went out by one door and he came out through another door, came back in through another door and hid behind the curtain on the altar. So same thing, Raghunandan sort of going through the whole procedure of doing the bhog offering. The deity doesn't come, he starts to cry. Krishna sat down, he ate everything on the plate. And then he had this laddu in his hand. The deity took a bite out of the laddu. And that's when Mukunda, he says, aha, now I know what's happened. And he had already taken a bite out of the laddu. And he got back up on the altar with the laddu in his hand. And you can go to the temple now, and the deity still, I don't know if it's the same laddu, but he's still holding a laddu in his hand with a bite out of it. So the point there is we see that Raghunandan Thakur, he had such faith that Krishna was the deity. He had such faith. He wasn't, nothing could sway him from that conviction. And we'll see in the lives of great devotees when they have this faith. I mean, they all have this faith, but through this faith, we see how the deity interacts with them directly. And also this point of veneration, we also see that even a greatly advanced devotee like Srila Prabhupada, the way he would interact with the deity was always one of great respect. And we see that in ISKCON also, that Srila Prabhupada has taught us this mood of worship is called Aishvarya, where we worship the deity with this great respect and awe and reverence, understanding that he's God and I am his eternal servant. And so we see how the deities, as you can see today, very, very beautifully dressed, beautiful garlands, nice clothing. Actually, this was made by your wife, right? This outfit, very beautiful outfit, huh? Very beautiful outfit, lovely colors. And so this is this mood of Aishvarya. And this really helps us to understand our position as this Gopi Bhatta Pada Kamalai, Dasa Dasa Anudasa, that how I am Krishna's eternal servant. And this is a really important understanding. And also you can see how everything on the altar is very clean. All the silverware is very shiny. The picture frames, everything very, very clean. There's also another very, very important element of deity worship. And there's a specific reason for that. Obviously, it's part of the awe and reverence approach, but also by always keeping everything in the deity worship very, very clean, we're cleansing our heart. Prabhupada explains, he said, if you're always cleaning the deity's room, and you're always cleaning the deity's things, you're also cleansing your heart. Another place he said, you're cleansing the spiritual master's heart. So it's a very, very important aspect. But also by engaging in deity worship, keeping things very clean, keeping things very punctual, you regulate the mind, you regulate the senses. And by regulating the mind and senses, they also become controlled and they become purified. And so there's many elements of deity worship. So, this temple is here and it is here for everyone to come and engage in deity worship. Now, you may not be a Brahmana, so it means you may not necessarily be able to go on the altar and engage in deity worship, but there's so many other elements of deity worship that we can get involved in. We can make garlands for the deities, we can make jewelry for the deities, you can clean the deities' paraphernalia, you can bring gifts for the deities. Actually, when Prabhupada established the temple in Los Angeles in 1967, I think it was, or 8, I can't remember, probably 67 or 68. He did this installation ceremony for Rukmini Dwarkanath. There's a very wonderful lecture Prabhupada gives, and he talks all about the mood of worship for the deity. I'll talk about that in a moment. But one of the things he did when he established these deities in Los Angeles is he had them put a large brass bowl in front of the altar. And he explained to all the devotees there, mostly they were hippies, but he explained to everyone who was there, is that every day when you come to see the deity, you bring the deity a gift, either some flowers or some fruit or whatever. You bring a gift for the deities. Because it's about an exchange. It's like Krishna's there, or Kodanitai and Mahaprabhu Shashi, they're there, and they're bestowing their benediction upon us simply by their glance. So let's reciprocate. In any relationship, there needs to be an exchange. So when you come, bring something for Krishna, and in this way, you're having a nice exchange with the deity. Also, in that lecture, because I mentioned this point of faith and veneration that's explained there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the idea of veneration, Srila Prabhupada, he talks about this mood of approach to the deity. It's a wonderful lecture, and he's saying that when you're offering something to the Lord, he talks about humility and not being proud. And then he says, my dear Lord, I have brought this offering to you, but you, out of your kindness, you please accept, that I am rotten, I am fallen, I have nothing to offer you. But out of your kindness, you accept what I have brought you. So, if you're worshiping, if you're bringing something for the deities here, or if you're doing service on the altar here, if we can cultivate this mood of humility, and this is something, that just in my personal kind of development in Krishna consciousness, this is something I'm trying to understand more and more, is humility, because it's such a key to devotional service. It's such a key to making progress in devotional service, is not to think I'm something special. This is why I don't want Prabhupada to give me an introduction, because usually these introductions, I've heard them in the past, they're so inflated. But it's out of love he's doing it. It's not like it's sort of some bad kind of whatever. But it's and what happens is when we hear, they're so wonderful, they're so this, it goes to your head, and you start to think you're something special. So rather than hear stuff like that, I'd rather hear about Krishna, because we know he's special. So the idea is not to have this idea of thinking that I am, something wonderful, or what I'm doing for Krishna is something wonderful. But because if you look at it, in a proper perspective, who am I? I'm just an infinitesimal spiritual being. Who is Krishna? He is the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's such a difference between us. And, I might cook something for Krishna. What do I know about cooking compared to Mother Yasoda or Srimati Radharani? What can I cook? I only know about 3 or 4 recipes. Radharani, she's such an extraordinary cook. She cooks something different for Krishna every single time. She never makes the same preparation twice. I couldn't do that. It always tastes the same when I cook it. So she's so unique. So what can I offer? What can I do for Krishna that's so wonderful? Nothing. But out of his kindness, he accepts the endeavor. He accepts our offering of love. And he says that in the Gita. He says, "Is one offers me with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, Ashtami," he says, "I'll accept that." And this is the kindness of Krishna. And this is the whole point of the deity descending. It's just like, if you look in is it 11th or the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam, I can't remember. It says, Kriti Yadhyayato Vishtam Tretiyam Yajato Vikay Dvapare Parichayayam Kaladhat Harikirtanat. So it's describing the different processes for the different ages. So it says Kriti. Kriti means golden, or gold. Kriti Yadhyayato Vishtam. So in the first age, the golden age, the practice of Krishna consciousness was Jayam, meditating on Krishna. Meditating on his form, meditating on his dham, different things like that. And then it says, Tretiyam Yajatomakai. So in Treta Yuga, the next stage, Yagya, performing Yagya. This is the means of God realization. But if you look at, meditation, for instance, you can hear of Valmiki Muni and other great personalities. They sat down and meditated for not an hour or two or a day or two, thousands of years. I think one of them sat down for 60,000 years meditating. We don't even live close to that, so who's going to be able to sit down and meditate for thousands of years? So not practical in this age. Then it says, Tretiyam Yajato Makai. So we can see in Treta Yuga, they performed Yagya. Idam Krishna Idam Nama, and Swaha, and throw the ghee and the grains in the fire. But then if you look at the performance of Yagya that was done in Treta Yuga, there's a story of a king, I think his name was Mandatta. And he was famous for his yagyas in Treta Yuga. Also, another king that was very famous was Bahishmati. So Bahishmati, he did so many. Bahishmati was doing fruitive yagyas, but he did so much yagya that the earth was completely strewn everywhere with kusha grass. That's what Bahishmati means: is the earth was covered in kusha grass from the yagyas. But when they did these yagyas, the wealth that was expended for the yagyas was just extraordinary. Mandatta, he had this whole mountaintip of gold, which he was using. He used it to make all the implements for the yagyas: the shuk, the shruva, the yagya kund, all the pots where the ghee was, and all the pots where the rice was, and things, the grains were for the yagya. And when he finished the yagya, he gave all the gold to brahmanas. All the brahmanas were present there. And the brahmanas, they had no need for it, so they just left it behind. And then it's described how this was just left there in the Himalayas. And when Yudhisthira was doing the Rajasuya Yaga, he sent Arjuna to bring some of that mountain gold. And Prabhupada says in the purport, he said, it's still there, so if you want to find it, you can go get some and use it for the Krishna consciousness movement. So, but who has that kind of wealth these days? We can perform yagya like that. And also, like, the priests were so expert. Like, I do yagyas all the time, and when I light the fire, it's a box of matches. They chant, Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, and then they chant the mantras from the different Vedas, and the flame comes. Agni Mile Purohitam, and comes in flames. Who does that now? No one can do that. And then we see even with the chanting of Hare Krishna, you know, and one thing really interesting about the yagas is the priest, he does the yaga, and when you start the yaga, you do all these different, hand gestures, to invite the deity to come into the fire. So maybe the priest has a concept of the deity being in the fire, but does anyone watching have that concept? Probably not. They just think, oh, he's, they have a fire and they're throwing some grains. It looks really nice, a lot of fun. But no one sees Krishna. And even when you're chanting the holy names, how many people experience Krishna dancing on their tongue? We can achieve that, but how many people experience that? But deity worship is so amazing, is you can come in the temple and you can see Lord Chaitanya. You can see Lord Nityananda with your material eyes. And you address the deity, you can feel him. You can touch him with your material senses. And you take Krishna Prasad, and you can taste him with your tongue. So Prabhupada explains that the deity is the mercy incarnation of Krishna. Why? Because he's come in a form that you can interact with your material senses. So there's a very, very powerful process, because it's just like, has anyone ever had the experience of being electrocuted? Pretty intense experience, isn't it? Your whole body becomes energized. Yeah? So it's like that when you come into contact with Krishna. Your whole body is becoming transcendentalized through that contact. So very, very important and powerful process. And by actively engaging in this process, you will achieve, as Mahaprabhu is saying here, your love of Godhead can be awoken by this process. So I encourage you all to come here as often as you can. I think it just went quiet. Come here as often as you can, and in whatever way you can, participate in the worship, whatever, according to your nature, according to your qualification. If you like to make jewelry, then you can talk to Mataji about, type of jewelry the deities need, what colors they need, things like that. If you want to make, I remember in Mayapur, one of the first times I went to Mayapur, we were making all these flower decorations for the deities. We're making earrings and turban pieces and all different stuff out of flowers, especially tube roses and other flowers like that. There's so many things you can do. You can make garlands for the deities. You can polish the paraphernalia. It's like, you can sort out the drawers where all the jewelry is kept. You can clean the kitchen. There's so many things you can do. But just, according to your capacity, and if you can't do any of that, if you don't have time for any of that, bring some flowers, bring some fruit, bring some, whole fruits, not cut up fruits. Bring whole fruits. You don't sort of chop off half, keep half at home, and bring half of the Krishna. Bring the whole fruit. And actually, it's interesting that Prabhupada explained one time to the devotees in I'm not sure where it was. It might have been Mumbai. That when you're offering fruit, for instance, you offer the whole fruit, because he's explaining the rasa is the same. Like if you take a banana, you take one piece of banana here, it's the same taste in the banana. So you offer the whole thing. And it's like a watermelon. A watermelon's can be like this big. So you can't offer a piece today, a piece tomorrow, a piece the next day. You offer the whole fruit. So that's why it's really important. Is if you're going to bring fruits or vegetables, bring the whole thing. Don't bring just a part of it. And whatever you can bring. If you have jewelry you want to give, like anything like that, or if you can bring money for the deities, whatever you can bring. So just somehow or other, center your life around the service of Krishna, and then your life will become perfect. This is what the process of Krishna consciousness is about, is somehow or other, center your life around Krishna. Prabhupada would sometimes explain, Krishna consciousness, becoming Krishna conscious means taking the I out of everything and putting Krishna in the middle. You don't necessarily have to change anything you're doing, just do it for Krishna. That's all you have to do, and then your life will become perfect. Okay. I didn't think I was going to speak that long. I thought I was going to speak 10 minutes and go home. Any comments or questions at all? I hope you all understood my accent. Yeah, just a few minutes ago, it went really quiet.
Just got one question. Is there any suggestion on people who don't have a deity at home, how they can, is that if we keep the picture? Sorry, Hare Krishna. Yeah, just my question is there any advice or any suggestion on someone who don't have a deity at home?
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, there's different things you can do. The first thing is I would encourage you to have a picture altar, because we know that in the 11th canto, chapter 27, I think it's verse 12, it's a really interesting chapter because it's Lord Krishna's instructions to Uddhava on the process of deity worship. So he mentions there that the deity manifests in 8 different types of forms or materials, and one of those is a picture. So the form of the picture, like you may have a picture of the deities, it's the same as the deities, non-different, because Krishna, like we're limited by form. We have this form, we can only do certain things. A bird has a particular form, it can only do certain things. A dog has another form, it can only do whatever that form dictates. But Krishna's not limited by form. He's always Satchidananda Vigraha, always, whether he's in a picture, whether he's in a three-dimensional deity or whatever. And so that's one thing you can do is have a picture altar at home, and then offer all your bhoga, have kirtan every day, and try to do an arti every day. Yeah? But also another really important thing, because this Krishna consciousness movement is meant to save the world. So you can participate in the Krishna consciousness movement by coming here to the temple and helping with the deity worship here, because that's going to help the missionary activities of ISKCON to develop. And that's, if you really want to do deity worship, that's the best way to do it, is in a community like this. Because what happens is like when you're at home, you do your deity worship at home, who benefits from that? You. Yeah, and some area around there's also a benefit. But if you come here and get involved here and spread the glories of these deities here, how many people benefit from that? It's just like, it's like phenomenal, the difference it makes. So therefore, I always encourage devotees. This is one of our kind of standard approaches. We generally don't encourage devotees to have deities at home. Maybe a picture altar at best. And Prabhupada would say what he called a Guru Garanga altar, meaning pictures of the Parampara and of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah? Keep it simple at home. Because also you're probably working, you probably don't have a lot of time, and most days when you get home from work, you have something to eat and go to bed because you're too tired. But when you have time, come here and participate here and help to push on Krishna consciousness in whatever way you can. This is the best type of worship. And if you really want to get involved in the best type of worship in Kali Yuga, go on Harinam. Yeah? This is the best way of worshiping Lord Chaitanya, is through Harinam. I mean, he likes deity worship, but there's lots of rules and regulations there. In chanting the holy name, no rules and regulations. Just get out there and do it. Yeah. Anything else at all?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah.
I heard one time in a lecture that everything you do, like here in a farm, if you work in the garden, if you whatever service you have, is all deity worship. But my understanding is different. My understanding is that archana is when you do something directly for the deities, like dressing the deities, cooking for the deities. Of course, if you are in the garden cultivating flowers for the deity, that's also part of archana. Yeah. But could be different services. And that person was saying that everything is archana. And my understanding is different for that. If you can please clarify.
Yeah, I guess there's different ways of looking at it. One time in Calcutta, Srila Prabhupada had asked Tamal Krishna Maharaj to go to Mayapur to buy the land. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj responded, he said, but Srila Prabhupada, I'd rather go on Sankirtan, go out and distribute your books. And then Srila Prabhupada made the comment that everything in this Krishna consciousness movement is Sankirtan. Because why? Because of the connection. As soon as you make a relationship, between the deity and the garden, or between the deity and the pots, or between the deity and the toilet, that you're cleaning. Not that the deity is in the toilet or anything, but you know what I mean? As soon as you connect it through the process of bhakti, it's absolute. So in one sense, you can consider that this is also deity worship because I'm doing it for the pleasure of the deities. But nonetheless, we still need devotees to engage in deity worship, to actually do the acts of deity worship, to do the rituals, to do the cooking, to do all that sort of stuff. So it's all absolute because it's all connected. But generally, when we talk about puja, we talk about, going, or archana, then we generally refer to that. So in a sense, you can say they're all connected. But still, there are specific services that need to be done. Just like, Prabhupada Prabhupada, he manages this temple very wonderfully. I mean, I just see every time I come here, it's just growing and growing and growing, and that's good. That's a very good sign. Of course, no one's perfect. We all mess up. We all make mistakes, and we can't satisfy everyone. That's just part of the human condition of life. I think is you're never going to satisfy everyone, and you're never going to be perfect. But he's giving his life to this service, and Jagannath Mataji, Jagannath Priya, right? She's giving her life to serving the deities, and that's glorious. It's the thing is like whatever you do it for the pleasure of Krishna, and that's glorious. And we always try to see the connection with Krishna. I mean, I remember when I joined the temple, it's like it seems like these days, like someone wants you to wash the pots, and they say, "Prabhu, can you wash the pots?" When I joined the temple, it was, "Prabhu, can you wash Krishna's pots?" It was always connected to Krishna, but I don't hear that as much these days. Maybe it's just me, I've just become conditioned, I don't hear it. But it was always like that. So I think it's really important to make that connection, always to make that connection. But also, it's important to come and do some deity worship. Actually, there's a really interesting purport, Madhya Lila 15:108. I quote this one quite a lot. And Prabhupada in this purport, he quotes 2 verses from the Bhakti Sandarbha, 283, 284. And he paraphrases these verses many places throughout his books. But in there, he talks about how Jiva Goswami was saying how some are of the view. He actually says, no, it is Srimad Bhagavatam's opinion that deity worship is not actually necessary. But this is Jiva Goswami speaking, 480, 90 years ago. He's saying, but insofar as we've experienced that those who approach us for initiation, their minds are so contaminated by the modes of material nature, therefore, at the time of initiation, they are obliged to engage in deity worship. And he uses the word obliged. So one of the main points of taking Diksha, especially Pancharatri Gayatri Diksha, is to engage in deity worship, because all the mantras you get, you get 7 mantras when you get Brahman Diksha, those mantras are used for deity worship. They have no other purpose. So it's really important. It's an important process, and all our acharyas gave it. They all give deity worship. They all engage in deity worship themselves. So it's a very, very important process. A bit of a long-winded answer, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. My question specifically, like you cannot get Archana CD by doing other services which are not directly offered to the deities.
Yeah, but that's true. What you're saying is true. But if you get siddhi, does it matter how you get it? If you get perfection, like Prabhupada would talk about Nitya Siddha, Sadhana Siddha, Kripa Siddha. He says Siddha is Siddha. It doesn't matter how you get it. You get perfection. So yes, Archan Siddhi is quite interesting. It's like if you achieve Archan Siddhi, Prabhupada explains this in a letter. If you achieve Archan Siddhi, at the end of this life, you go directly back to the spiritual world. You don't go to another universe where Lord Chaitanya or Lord Krishna is performing his pastimes. You go directly back to the spiritual world. And I spoke about this with Janani Prabhu, and the understanding we came to is because when you're serving the deities directly, you are engaged in Krishna's pastimes. Because the Archa is one of the 5 incarnations. There's Para, there's Vyuha, there's Vaibhav, there's Vilas, and Archa, one of the 5 manifestations of the Lord. So you're directly engaged, if you achieve perfection, you're directly engaged in pastime with Krishna. So very important. But Siddha is Siddha, so however you get it doesn't matter. But if your attraction is Archan, then you can very easily achieve perfection through the process of Archan. My pleasure. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Particularly in the morning program, we spend a lot of time witnessing artis or either offering artis ourselves. And I just wonder if you could actually explain what is happening in the process of offering arti and what our mind and what we should be thinking of. And
Yeah, Prabhupada explains that in a that there's a series of recordings that were done in Los Angeles when they had the recording studio there, and then so Prabhupada one time he was explaining the Gaur Arti song, and he says Gaurange Arati Aroti Keshava. How does it go? Brahma Adi Deva Gane. So he's talking about. He says the Brahma and all the demigods, they are offering arti to Lord Chaitanya. He said arti means reception. So, reception. So it means like when you're offering arti to the deities, you're receiving the deity. It's just like, I don't know, has anyone ever had the experience on going on Harinam in say, somewhere like Vrindavan? And you go down through Loy Bazaar, and all the shopkeepers come out and they offer lamps and incense to the kirtan party. Yeah? So they're receiving them. They're thinking this is an honored guest that's coming. So it says Gaurange Arotika Shiva Jagajana. It says Brahma Adi Deva. So Brahma, Lord Brahma, Adi Deva, and that means and all the other demigods are engaging in reception, this reception or welcoming Lord Chaitanya. So when you offer the arti, there's different items that are offered in the arti. There's incense, there's lamp, there's flowers, there's water in a conch, there's a cloth, chamra, peacock fan. I think that's everything. So incense is like, what does an incense do? It creates a pleasing atmosphere. So it's just like, like sometimes, when you go to sometimes you go to places and there's a horrible smell. What's your immediate reaction to that? You want to leave. You want to go somewhere else because it's an unpleasant smell. Yeah? But when you go somewhere and you think, oh, that's a nice smell, you feel comfortable to be there. And also, so when something's a bad smell, it's an inauspicious thing. When something's a good smell, it's auspicious. You look at like all the auspicious flowers, roses, different types of mullet, jasmine, stuff like that. They're all considered auspicious flowers. So good smells are auspicious, but not artificial smells, natural smells. Then a lamp has many, especially those of you who are from India or have some experience in India, will know that one of the major things of a lamp is this illumination, right? But it's not just like giving light. It's the Hari Bhaktivilas Sanatana Goswami explains how the lamp, Swaprakasha, how's it go? Swaprakasha, I can't remember the verse. It talks about how the lamp gives illumination both within and without. So not only is it providing physical illumination, but it's a symbol of knowledge. Yeah? It's quite a common thing in India, is a symbol of knowledge. Then the next thing we have is the water in a conch. Now, this is kind of often misunderstood aspect of arti, because the water in the conch is not for bathing. Because Krishna's standing there with all his clothes on. You're not going to pour water over his head. Especially all these fine clothes and garlands and things, it's not very. But actually, there's in the Krishna book, when I can't remember whether it was Balaram or Krishna was returning back to Dwarka, and they sent, I think it was Balaram, and they sent for the Brahmanas, and the Brahmanas came with the Argya. So Argya is a special water that has different types of auspicious elements, and it'll have like durva grass, sometimes kusha grass tips, sometimes the various cracked grains like barley and white sesame and white mustard seeds and things like that. And they crack them up so the essence of the grain goes into the water, and that's sprinkled on the head of the person. Now, there's one place in the I think it's in the Kartik Mahatmya where Narad Muni is received with this Argya water, and he's thinking, "Oh, this is very cultured." And he likes it. It's because it's actually a very, very cultured way of receiving a guest. And when someone who knows culture is received like this, they think this is the best reception. Anyhow, so in this place in the Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada says they went and offered for the Argya Arti water. So we can see he's made that connection, calling it, the arti water argya. So it's water for reception. So you're receiving a guest. And when you look at it in the context of Prabhupada explaining that the arti means reception, then it makes sense. So then if the water is not for bathing, then obviously the cloth is not for drying. So many of you have probably been to these really high-class programs in India, right? Where there'll be a distinguished guest sitting down. What do? No, they do that, but sometimes they'll give them gifts. They give them a chara or a dhoti or something like that, So that's also a sign of respect. It's like when someone comes to your home, you give them a gift of cloth. So that's what the cloth means. And then flowers, offering a submission to the lotus feet. Chamra is another thing that's often misunderstood, because sometimes devotees think, oh, the chamra is for cooling. But honestly speaking, you really got to work hard to make that cooling. It just doesn't give much wind at all. The chamra has a particular purpose. Prabhupada was in one temple, and the devotees were standing there with a chamra. And Prabhupada says, yes, this chamra, this is for getting rid of flies. And even if it touches the body, there's no harm. And you'll see sometimes in Mayapur, just after Gaurapanim, you get all these flying ants come. Millions of them. They just cover the whole place with flying ants. And when you come to the temple, and flying ants are really interesting. They live for one day and they die, or their wings drop off. But and you come to Mangalarti in the morning, and Prabhupada is covered in these flying ants. So Janani Vasi comes with a chamra, and he just lightly dusts all the flying ants off Prabhupada, because the chamra doesn't hurt them. So it's it's quite it's an interesting culture where in the culture you try to avoid causing violence to anyone, and so with the chamra you can do that. And then of course the peacock fan. The chamra is also a royal insignia. We know in the Krishna book how that story of Pundraka, how Pundraka was saying to Krishna, because Krishna was, Pundraka had these like fake arms stuck on the back. It was really interesting character. Anyhow, he was getting abusive towards Krishna. He says, I have given you the royal insignia like the chamra and the conch. But actually Krishna, they were his to start with. So it's a royal insignia, a sign of royalty. And the peacock fan is for cooling. So that's a quick synopsis of an arti. But it's to receive. And as far as your meditation, one time the devotees asked Prabhupada, oh, Prabhupada, when I'm offering arti, what should I meditate on? And Prabhupada said, what's the question of meditating on anything? Krishna is standing there, just offering arti. So Prabhupada was very practical on these things. Don't get into too much esoteric stuff. Yeah?
When we offer argya to the deities, and then we pass it into the devotees, and then we offer to Prabhupada. I've seen some devotees, they offer again Prabhupada, and other devotees, they bring some of the water on the head of the
Yeah.
So what is the correct way?
I've seen a lot of unusual things too. Whatever. Usually you would just sprinkle it on his head. It's the same as like sometimes you see devotees, they'll come with the ghee lamp, and they'll offer the ghee lamp arti style to Prabhupada. But the idea is you're offering it to him so he can honor the remnants of the Lord. So you just have to be practical with that. But you have to be careful with some of these things, like with the lamps, for instance. You don't want to put it right up to his hands, because the form that Prabhupada's manifest in is made of fiberglass or resin, and if you put it right up to his hands, you may melt the resin. It's quite flammable when it gets hot enough. And also, I don't know if you offer scents here on the altar, but the scents also, if you put those oils on the resin, it can damage the resin. So you have to be careful of things like that. Yeah. But for us, Prabhupada is manifest here in this deity. So the same as Prabhupada, if he was standing here right in front of us, what would you do? You would actually offer it to him in a way. So the thing is with argya water, there's two ways you can offer it. One way is you can offer it over the head or on the head of the person, or the other way is you can offer the hands. And then you put it in their hands and they sprinkle on their own head. That's considered to be a more respectful way of doing it, but either way is okay. Madhoksha Prabhu, thank you for the lovely Harinam yesterday.
When you're standardizing deity worship,
there's a certain element of spontaneity in there, where it's a relationship between the deity and the pujari. So you don't want to cramp the person's style, and at the same time, as we are an institution, we have to standardize things. But within that, then we see that different devotees have different moods and different ways that they do things. So should that be allowed, or would that be an instruction?
But the thing is, like, what we standardize is rituals. That's not a person's, interaction with the deity. That's just a ritual, and the rituals are given by the acharyas. We don't have to kind of make it up, because if you look in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 24.3.34, Srila Prabhupada, lists the 64 items of deity worship given by Sanatana Goswami. He lists the 5 items, he lists the 16 items, 64 items. That's what we standardize. In terms of the relationship or someone's, for want of a better word, bhava, at the stage of Vaidhi Bhakti, that doesn't come into it. The stage of Vaidhi means, what does Vaidhi mean? It means rules. So it means you follow the rules in a regulated fashion. That's what Vaidhi Bhakti means. So at the stage of Vaidhi Bhakti, there's not really much scope for manifesting one's bhava. That comes when the heart becomes purified. So by following the rules and regulations in a regulated fashion, then the heart becomes purified. Then this stuff manifests automatically. It's not about us trying to restrict it or anything like that. It just comes out automatically. So they're two totally different things, really. Hope that answers your question. Because we don't want devotees doing strange things with Krishna. Prabhupada said, don't make it a fast. He said, dress according to your own style, but don't make it a fast. And sometimes you see when devotees, they dress the deities, they do strange things that don't fit within the scope of this aura and reverence, like putting masks on the deities, or dressing Krishna or up as a gopi, or actually one time I saw Nityananda dressed as a gopi. What basis in Guru, Sadhana, and Shastra does that have? So, deity worship is very much according to the rules and regulations of the Pancharatra. That's what deity worship means in ISKCON, according to the rules and regulations of Pancharatra. And that's what our Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, has established. And, like with any science, if you apply the science, if you follow the science, you'll get the benefit. But if you start to do things differently, an example I often give is cooking. So many of you know how to cook, right? Now, there's a preparation we cook in ISKCON quite often called halava. Right? Now, there's a science of cooking halava, and it's kind of interesting. Not many people know the science. But there's, I was taught by a very wonderful devotee called Brigupati how to make halava, and I make it like this, and it works out every time without fail. You put it in, you put the grains in the butter, you stir it and stir it and stir it until it starts to sound like wet sand swishing around in a bucket. Then you add the boiling water, and you stir it until it starts to pull away from the sides, because then it's absorbed the water enough. Then you turn it off, put a lid on it, or you can put it on low flame, leave it sit for a few minutes, right? And as long as you have the right ratio of butter, sugar, water, and grains, of course you can put fruit and stuff in it as well, you'll get nice halava. But as soon as you start to mess with those ratios, you're going to wind up with something else. Like if you decide, well, I'm not going to put sugar in it this time, I'm going to put salt in it. What do you wind up with? Upma. It gives you something different. So it's the same. It's like if you look at our process of bhakti, right? It's a particular relationship, particular sambandha. Therefore, the sambandha determines the avideya, which then determines the prayojana. So our relationship with Krishna is this ultimately is this mood, this Goloka Vrindavan, in whatever particular relationship it may be, whether it's a cowherd boy or a gopi or whatever. I don't know. I'm not ready for that. So our acharyas then give us a specific practice of bhakti to achieve that. But if we start to follow something, say, for instance, from the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, very different goal. Their prayojana is very different. Theirs is Vaikuntha. That's not our destination. Nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly valid. It's just like we see with who was it, Murari Gupta, I think it was, who was a Hanuman Bhakta, and he was being criticized by some of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates, but Lord Chaitanya accepted that because that was his ras. So there's nothing wrong with it. But if we're going to be members of ISKCON, let's just follow what the acharyas have given us, and then we'll achieve the destination of this sampradaya. But if you're looking for a different destination, then maybe a different sampradaya suits you. But in this sampradaya, we follow the process given by the acharyas. And that's one of the challenges for me, at least in the ministry, is like devotees are always very creative, sometimes overly creative, and coming up with different ideas on how we should worship the deities. I just say, look, Prabhupada gave us the perfect process. Let's just follow that. And it'll take us back to Godhead in this one life if you apply it properly. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Dr. Jarul.
When you go to the different temples to see the standards are being kept, what I've noticed, I haven't gone all around the ISKCON temples, but when I've gone to other temples, the deities seem more manifest when they're being worshipped nicely, and less manifest when they're not being worshipped so nicely. So is that a sign that you look for when you're going around the different temples?
I mean, I don't know. Wherever I go, the deities just seem really far out. I mean, I just think they're amazing. And one of the things I find quite extraordinary about the process of deity worship is that even in the simple act of offering food to the deities, offering bhoga, you can have one person who's in really good Krishna consciousness, or really following the process strictly and applying themselves very, very effectively. And Krishna's going to accept that service, but the other person is just doing it begrudgingly, doesn't want to be there, and not following regular principles and stuff. And he's not going to accept that. Does it become prasad or not? Of course it's prasad, because this devotee's got bhakti. So he's accepting that, but he's not accepting the offering that doesn't have bhakti. But it's so, I mean, I've never come across a situation where I don't think there's bhakti in the worship. But some individuals may be struggling, and the temple may be struggling as a whole financially, and the number of devotees and stuff like that. But you always come across, devotees who are trying their best. And they may be limited in their capacity. Maybe the way they dress the deities is a little bit not so expert. Maybe the paraphernalia is old and beaten up and stuff. But they're trying their best. And there's that phrase, Bhava Grahi Janardana, where Krishna, he's accepting the intention of the worshipper. So if the worshipper is trying their best, and also there's that story from the Ramayana where Hanuman, he's throwing these big mountains into mountain peaks into the water to build this bridge to Lanka, and there's a spider. Sometimes they say squirrel, but there's a spider there throwing grains of sand into the ocean. And Hanuman is telling the spider, you're going to get hurt. You better get out of the way. And Ram corrected him. He said, I see his service, because Hanuman was saying, well, but you're not doing much anyhow. You're just throwing little grains of sand. And here I am. I'm throwing mountain peaks. Just let me do the job. But Ramchandra said, I accept his service the same as your service, because you are both serving me to the best of your capacity. And that's one of the things I always try to be conscious of, even though, according to my conditioning, I might think this is not as good as what this other person's doing. But I try to see the fact that they're doing it according to the best of their capacity. And some people are expert with rituals, other people aren't. And the same as when we're teaching, because I've just done three seminars over the last few months on deity worship. Some people are super expert with mantras. They just rattle mantra after mantra after mantra. Other people, they struggle to pronounce Prabhupada's pranam prayers. But it doesn't mean that they don't have bhakti. It doesn't mean they're not really trying their best in devotional service. So we need to see that, okay, in all facets of devotional service, some people may be expert at doing something, but they don't have much in their heart. But some people are very inept or not particularly skilled, but they're trying with the best of their capacity to serve Krishna. And that's really what's important, is what's in the heart, not how skilled you are, what's in your heart. So, I mean, I don't think I've ever really come across a temple where I don't think there's devotees trying to the best of their capacity. I know I've come across devotees who aren't trying. I know that, or who are kind of like, their motives may be a little bit sort of not so pure. But yeah, everywhere I go, I see, and like the perennial question I get asked is, which is the most beautiful deity you've ever seen? They're all beautiful. It doesn't matter where I go; they're all beautiful. They're all just so attractive, because that's the nature of Krishna. He's all attractive in whatever form he manifests himself. And it's kind of interesting you ask this, because when I was walking out the ashram, I just noticed I haven't seen it before today. I haven't noticed that there's a sign on the door: try to see the good in everyone. And I thought that's a good point. I'll try to remember that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I see that wherever I go in deity worship, it is that devotees are trying to the best of their capacity. Hari Bol. Okay. Anything else at all? Yes, Manaji. Nice and loud. I'm half deaf.
Thanks so much for the very nice class. So in India, let's say other temples, not ISKCON, but other temples. So every time we go, we can they do like archana, and they can do aarti and give us aarti.
Yeah.
And how is that different? Because here in ISKCON there is a regulated time schedule for aartis, but in other temples in India, every time we go, we can have an aarti and get that. And also they give tirtham, like tulsi with camphor water for us to take.
Chanamrita, we call it here.
Yeah, Charanamrita, but I think it's slightly different.
Yeah,
it's just
I mean,
water. Yeah.
Every ISKCON temple you go to, the recipe for Chanamrita is different.
I mean the other, not ISKCON temples, but other Hindu temples.
But you'll find the same principles there. This is one of the 64 elements of deity worship I was talking about, is to take the remnants from the deity, the uchista, the garlands, and the flowers from the feet, the tulsi, but also the bathing water. And I think the bathing water is just outside, isn't it? There's just the pot of bathing, so you can take that. But sometimes, like in some temples, like you say, they put camphor in the water. Sometimes different oils. Sometimes that you'll find some temples you go, especially in South India, there's a lot of chandan in it with saffron, so that the water's quite reddish. Not reddish, but orangey color. So different formula, but the same thing. And in terms of aarti, yeah, we have scheduled aartis here in the temple, but also we just finished Damodar month, so you also get the opportunity to offer lamps here. That's more. It's not just ISKCON; it's a Gaudiya thing. If you go to any of the temples in Braj, you'll see that during that time of year they're all doing the same sort of thing. There's a thing called Urja Brat, which is followed for this month from the full moon to the full moon, and you'll see some of the temples. I remember seeing it in the Radha Shamasunda temple one year, where they have a big bamboo pole in the courtyard, and up on top of the bamboo pole there's a little sort of cage thing with a lamp in it. So this is part of that brat. So it's just different sampradayas do things differently. So we follow the Gaudiya sampradaya. We're actually part of the Gaudiya sampradaya, and we're a particular branch of the Gaudiya sampradaya. So some of the things we do in this branch of the Gaudiya sampradaya are according to what Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, has given us. So that's you'll see some variations, but you'll see variations in all the sampradayas. There's 4 main sampradayas, and Sri Vaishnava. But even within Sri Vaishnavism, there's the Tangalayas and the Vadalayas. They have some variation in how they do things and their approach. So it's just normal. You're going to see variation. If you go from one family to the next, you see variations. So, but it doesn't mean that the opportunity to serve is not there. There's so many. Because see, one of the problems here is like, and I've seen it happen in ISKCON temples where people will come in and they'll bring their own lamps and incense and stuff like that. And well, where do they put it? They put it down on the line over here, and they burn a hole in the lino. Whereas like the temples in India, they're all marble and stuff like that. So it's a bit different.
Oh no, I meant not we doing the aarti, rather the pujari would every time visitors come, they would do.
Well, that's more South Indian. That where they crack the coconuts and they'll offer a lamp. But then also that's like, you will see that in some ISKCON temples, but oftentimes you have to give a donation to get that.
Yeah.
So we're not so much focusing on using the deity to raise funds. And oftentimes that's like you'll only get that if you give money. Or like, some temples you go, you give them 2,000 rupees, you can get a really close darshan. Or sometimes you can give money, you can actually bathe the deity. Like if you go to Pandapur, you give, I think it's 200 rupees, and you can go up and bathe the deity. But that's not our approach here in ISKCON. In ISKCON, we don't see the deity as a way to raise money. We see the deity as this is our worshipful Lord, and according to qualification, then we can worship the deity. So it's just different.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's a different process. It's just a different way of doing it and different understandings. Same. You can come take darshan.
Thank you.
But also those temples do have scheduled artis. You go to any of those temples, they all have their scheduled artis. But then also you'll see like the bhoga they offer is very different.
Yeah.
It's just sweets usually. Some of them offer rice, but mostly it's just sweets. Whereas here we offer the full meals to the deity.
Thank
yeah.
you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. You've all been sitting here for a long time. I think you must be getting sore legs like me. Okay, thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
His Grace Nrisimha Kavacha Prabhu ki.
So thanks to Nrisimha Kavacha for the enlightening talk. And he'll be here for the next week. So there'll be a few things on in the morning and evening. Morning class will be given either by Nrisimha Kavacha or Murli Manohar, who's head pujari of Soul Street, Radha London Shore. And there'll be a few evenings this week also. There'll be some further discourses about deities and other aspects of Krishna consciousness. So we can advertise to everybody and let you know. And if you can come along, that's great. Otherwise, we hope to see you again next Sunday. And I think for the pleasure of Shishi Kodni Taima Pushashi, back to Pip's going to sing a nice bhajan. Is that right? It's the Song of a Broker, which is glorification of Lord Nityananda, who is the broker of the marketplace of the holy name. So someone going to display this up here? So we could, someone can read the translation first. Are you going to come up here by the mic? So once the translation's there, then Pip will read it out and then we can sing it. Take it as it goes.
I am singing news of happy, holy tidings. Nitai has opened a marketplace of the holy name in Surabikunj. He is selling the pure holy name in that marketplace for the price of only one's faith. Lord Nityananda, seeing all the devotees becoming attracted, is bargaining with them and selling them the holy name. Oh brother, if you want the holy name, then come with me. Come to that great soul, Nityananda. You'll get the name of Krishna. I'll take my commission and all of our desires will be fulfilled. Lord Nityananda is very merciful. Taking only one's faith, he gives the highest ecstasy. If he sees only once tears in the eyes while chanting the name Gaura, then he gives everything to that person. He gives the pure teachings of Krishna to everyone, not caring for their birth, wealth, knowledge, or strength. Now, giving up the illusionary snare of Maya, either remain in household life or in the forest as a sannyasi, no more troubles remain. There is no more fear of the age of Kali. The merciful Nitai gives the holy name to even the Chandalas. Bhakti Vinod calls out, except for the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, there is no other shelter. Shikod Nitai ki. Boro suker kaburgai, Boro suker kaburgai. Boro suker kaburgai, Boro suker kaburgai. Jurabi kunjeti namer hat kuleche. Jurabi kunjeti namer hat kuleche. Kodanitai, Kodanitai. Kodanitai, Kodanitai. Boromojar kathatai, Boromojar kathatai. Boromojar kathatai, Boromojar kathatai. Shradamul Yeshudanam sehatate bikai. Shradamul Yeshudanam sehatate bikai. Kodanitai, Kodanitai. Kodanitai, Kodanitai. Jata Bhakta Brindabasi, Jata Bhakta Brindabasi. Jata Bhakta Brindabasi, Jata Bhakta Brindabasi. Adhikare dekhe nam beche darokasi. Adhikari dekhe nam beche darokasi. Kodanitai, Kodanitai. Kodanitai, Kodanitai. Jadinam kinve bhai, Jadinam kinve bhai. Jadinam kinve bhai, Jadinam kinve bhai. Amma Sanje Chalo Mahajene Kache Jai. Amma Sanje Chalo Mahajene Kache Jai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Tumekinbe Krishna Nam, Tumekinbe Krishna Nam. Tumekinbe Krishna Nam, Tumekinbe Krishna Nam. Dastori lao boami purne habekam. Dastori loi boami purna habekam. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Borodoyal Nityananda, Borodoyal Nityananda. Borodoyal Nityananda, Borodoyal Nityananda. Shradamatra loyeden Paramananda. Shradamatra loyeden Paramananda. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai. Jaya, Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai. एक बार देख ले छक से जा, एक बार देख ले छक के जा. एक बार देख ले छक से जा, एक बार देख ले छक से जा. Gora bole nitai den sakala samba. Gora bole nitai den sakala samba. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Den Shura Krishna Shiksha, Den Shura Krishna Shiksha. Then Sura Krishna Shiksha, then Sura Krishna Shiksha. Jati Dhana Vidyapal na kore apeksha. Jati Dhana Vidyapal na kore apeksha. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Amni chade maya ja, amni chade maya ja. Amni marit mas maya ja, amni chade maya ja. Grihe thako bane thako na thake janja. Grihe thako bane thako na thake janja. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Arnaiko kalir boy, Arnaiko kalir boy. Arnaiko kalir boy, Arnaiko kalir boy. Achandele den namanitai doyamoy. Achandale den namanitai doyamoy. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Bhakti Vinodaki koi, Bhakti Vinodaki koi. Bhakti Vinodaki koi, Bhakti Vinodaki koi. Nitai charan bina nahi ashroy. Nitai charan bina nahi ashroy. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Kodanitai, Jaya Kodanitai, Jaya Kodanitai. Jaya Mayapur Shashi Jaya, Mayapur Shashi Jaya, Mayapur Shashi Jaya, Mayapur Shashi. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Gauranitai Mayapur Shashi Ki, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Hare Krishna. And so it was planned to have the second part of the kirtan stood up. So if everybody would like to clear some space and we can stand up and do a little bit more chanting. Huh?
Just go ahead. Nice to get flowers, sorry.
I don't mind, I didn't notice.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi